Welcome to the Imagineering Education Podcast. This is Thomas Riddle. Thanks for joining us for conversations held at the crossroads of education and design, with a healthy dose of inspiration from Disney's Imagineers. Each week, we feature pertinent commentary on relevant issues and informative interviews with leaders and practitioners from the fields of education, design, entertainment, and more. In today's episode, we'll be continuing our conversation with my good friend and partner in all things Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Wes Dodgens. Besides being a veteran high school social studies teacher with nearly 20 years in the classroom, he's also the co-founder with me of Adventures in Learning with Indiana Jones, as well as Star Wars in the Classroom. So Wes, welcome back, my friend.
Hey, Thomas. I appreciate you having me on again. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. So last week, we spoke a little bit about the background of our work with Teaching with Indiana Jones, in particular, the Young Indy series. And today I thought we'd tell the story of Star Wars in the Classroom and the impact that initiative has had on classes really around the world. And so let's talk a little bit about how all that came to be.
Sure. Well, I think, for you and I mean, we love Indiana Jones. We love Young Indy. There's no doubt about it. And of course, that's a good origin point for us. But, I think what really brings us together and where the point of origin really is of course, Star Wars. And while there's great educational content there, I think when you and I were first getting together and getting started with our collaborations, everything with Young Indy and that timeline of the DVDs and everything, it just kind of meshed naturally as a starting point. But I think, you and I both could probably agree that, our real bread and butter, the thing we love is Star Wars.
Right.
And so, for you and I, that's kind of what brought that together, I guess.
Yeah. So Wes, tell me, what do you think is so appealing to students about teaching or learning with Star Wars?
Well, Star Wars, it's of course fantasy, but there's so many underlying elements, some overt, some not, that, there's something in Star Wars for everyone. Everybody can relate to something in Star Wars, whether it's, being Luke Skywalker, feeling like you're this isolated person, this isolated teenager out there dreaming about the big dreams, waiting for that big opportunity to come that's going to take you away on your big adventure. And then you end up being the hero or whatever, or maybe it's you relate to Leia, you relate to Rey. There's just so many, and maybe you're just goofy like C-3PO, or maybe you're bossy like R2-D2, but there's something there for everybody. And maybe, we all have a little Darth Vader in us, and, thinking about Star Wars, thinking about the challenges that he really created for himself, it's a good reminder to maybe help us stay grounded sometimes.
Right,
so
absolutely.
There's something for everybody.
The rise, fall, and redemption of Anakin Skywalker, if you want to call it that,
Sure.
is really kind of a morality tale.
Yeah.
Kind of along the lines of some of the morality tales told during the Middle Ages. And it really is that any of us could become Anakin. It's all
right. Absolutely.
Or could become Vader. We are Anakin. We're just Anakin's kind of the everyman. Yes, he had special powers, but at the end of it, he was just a person, a little boy who was scared, and then a teenager who was scared and tried to overcompensate with using his talents, and then at the end of the day, bottom line is he was frightened. And so that could be any of us making decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Whether it's like him being, scared of loss, or, just scared of failure, or whatever it is. I mean, there are so many things we can learn from the path that he walked. But there's also that reminder that even if we stray too far, there's still a pathway back. Unfortunately for him, it ended with him dying, but there's still a pathway back if we choose to go back.
Right. And I think that his death was very part of the mythology, was influential in the creation of Star Wars. Lucas leaning on that monomyth where,
right.
There's the greatest sacrifice is to lay down your life. Like Jesus says in the Bible, no greater man or no greater love has this than a man lay down his life for his friends. And so you see that throughout cultures, throughout stories. And
sure.
That's something that Anakin does, Vader does, and redeems himself. But so, on this show, we've talked a good bit about teaching mythology with Star Wars. So we've covered that before, and that's really where I got the most bang for my buck. That's how I started teaching with Star Wars, was using it as a way to introduce ninth graders to world mythology and ancient history. And Yoda's a great example of a Taoist sage when you're trying to teach kids about Eastern philosophy and Taoism. And there's these great historical connections as well, though. And as a history teacher, I use that quite a bit, and I know you did too, or do too. Whereas I focused a lot on the parallels with the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Tell us a little bit about how you have taught with Star Wars in your history classrooms.
So one of the opportunities that I've had in my career, pretty much my whole career, is that I've had the opportunity to teach an elective on the World Wars. And there's a little bit of Cold War mixed in there at the end as well. And so, especially with World War II, a lot of the content that we have to cover, the kids, of course, have studied much of that before. But in this particular class, we get to deep dive into, deeper causes of the war and, of course, the war itself. And, growing up, you don't really think about these things as a kid because, number one, you don't know a lot about, World War II as a child. But as you get older and you learn about history and you're still watching Star Wars, you realize there's all sorts of parallels and all sorts of connections to the stories that George Lucas is telling. And to me, one of the things that stuck out in particular, and this is something I do in class to this day, may not get to do it because of COVID this year, but I teach the rise and fall of Hitler, basically paralleling that with the prequels. Now, we don't quite get to the fall part. I guess I shouldn't say that, because that's obviously later. But I use the prequel trilogy to basically have kids compare the rise of Palpatine and the Empire with the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. And then there's elements within that we also look at, such as the Night of the Long Knives, and we compare that to the Jedi Purge in Episode 3. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we do with that. We also look at the Dam Busters, and we compare that to the famous trench raid from the first movie, or actually the fourth movie, Episode 4. And it's kind of cool to watch that and learn about that and realize, I hate to say rip off because that's kind of what he did, but George Lucas basically took this great story from history and just kind of retold it in a slightly different way. And it's, of course, very creative of him to do that, but it's a great way to have the kids kind of hook them into learning about the Dam Busters with this impossible mission, very similar to the raid on the Death Star. So
yeah, if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, there's a great movie called The Dam Busters that's about this high-risk mission in World War II. It's really fascinating, and I highly recommend that you look at the movie. And what Wes was referring to about ripping off the Dam Busters too is the you can, if you just go on YouTube and look up Dam Busters Star Wars, there will be some great side-by-side footage of that final battle of A New Hope, where it looks very similar to the final attack on the dam and the Dam Busters. And of course, I wouldn't say rip off. It's an homage, right? It's an homage.
Yeah, that's probably a better, more honorable way to say that. But also, too, it's not just the visuals that are very similar, but it's also the dialogue. If you watch that attack scene on the dam in the movie, it's they're doing the call signs at the beginning, and some of the dialogue. Look at the size of that thing. I mean, some of that stuff is just it's almost exactly the same. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. Well, Lucas used dogfight footage from different World War II movies as placeholders.
Oh yeah.
When he was trying to pitch the film
Sure.
to 20th century. But so that's a great movie. I would definitely check that out. But
well, can I point out too that it's not just a movie. The dam busting missions actually really happened
exactly
in World War II as well. But Lucas took a lot of influence and visual cues and obviously dialogue cues as well from the movie that was made. But the missions were real in the war as well. So
let's jump into how Star Wars in the Classroom came about. Wes and I had been running the India in the Classroom website for several years. And then we heard about this purchase by Disney,
The now infamous
Lucasfilm.
purchase.
Yeah, famous, infamous. But about the time that Disney, or actually when Disney purchased Lucasfilm, Wes and I started talking and said, I think it was Wes's idea that we needed to expand to a new website called Star Wars in the Classroom, and start to put more content out related to Star Wars. We'd both been teaching with Star Wars for quite a while, and now we just thought that we would put that together in a format we could share with others.
Yeah, a lot of the timing, obviously, I mean, with Disney making that purchase of Lucasfilm and announcing that there were going to be new movies and new content, I think that was, for you and I, a major kind of jumping off point, because we realized that it's not just these old movies anymore. There's going to be new content that we can use and build off of and make new lessons and come up with new ideas and connections from. But you and I had always really dreamt of doing the same thing with Star Wars as we'd been doing with Young Indy. But I think, you and I talking about it, we were always a little hesitant because we knew Star Wars was like the Lucasfilm, favorite child and all that kind of stuff. And we were worried about copyright infringements and things like that. But I mean, we kind of finally just realized there's so many fan sites out there and stuff like that. We just said, forget it. We'll do it and see what happens. And it was a good thing to do.
Absolutely. I think one thing that we were encouraged by in pursuing this Star Wars in the Classroom project was how gracious everyone at Lucasfilm had been.
Oh yeah, they've been great.
With their interest in Indy in the Classroom. And so when we started Star Wars in the Classroom with a disclaimer that this isn't affiliated with Lucasfilm, but there's a couple of guys that love teaching with Star Wars and wanted to share that content. And of course, it blew up from there. Immediately, we had a lot of interest. And as soon as we launched the website, and of course, we expanded on the social media platforms like we did with Indy too, with our Twitter account and Facebook account. And pretty quickly, the interest in the Star Wars content dwarfed the Indiana Jones content. And of course, I think there was a lot of excitement around Disney's purchase and talk about new movies. And of course, just in general, probably a larger market for Star Wars worldwide. And so we had so much interest, we decided we really needed to kind of create some sort of group that would people could associate themselves with as hey, we're part of this this cadre of teachers who teach with Star Wars. And that's how we came up with our teacher professional learning network that we called the Rogues. I very vividly remember calling Wes and say, hey, I got this idea for our network, and we're going to call it the Rogues because, you got to be a little roguish if you're teaching with Star Wars.
Yeah, for real. I mean, that was a perfect name for it because even to this day, not only with students, but even teachers who don't know me, maybe they're new or we just haven't had a chance to get to know each other real well, they always find it so fascinating and intriguing that I teach using Star Wars. Of course, not exclusively. It's not like I do this every day, but they're always so curious about that. They're like, how in the world do you do that? How is Star Wars educational? And what's kind of a universal thing is as soon as you start explaining what you do with it and start talking about the different connections, whether it's the mythology stuff or the history stuff, you just see the light bulb go off and they're like, oh, of course, I get it. Gosh, I wish you'd been my history teacher. I probably would have learned things so much better. I would have paid attention. And I mean, that's always the response.
Right. Well, we've also been fortunate in that we've been able to present our content, this initiative, Teaching with Star Wars, actually, and with Indy also. We've been able to present that at different teacher conferences over the last 10 or 12 years. The first conference we presented at was actually the WNET conference in New York, the Education Celebration Conference. That was for Indiana Jones, for the launch of the Young Indy series. We did that along with David Schneider. And I guess that was our first conference where we presented about the educational value of this Lucasfilm IP, which was, of course, that case was Indy. And then started to have the opportunity to do some other conferences. I think I did one called the Adventures in Learning with Indy and Luke. And talked about both of them. And then it just kind of turned into doing workshops and conferences on how to teach with Star Wars, beyond just mythology and history, but also with science as well. Matter of fact, I was able to present at our state science teachers convention in South Carolina about the impact of teaching science with Star Wars. And that was a well-attended workshop and well-received. And there's a lot of cool things that you can do with science and Star Wars as well. And so, we've learned a lot from our fellow rogues, these teachers who've joined our network over the last several years. And people are so eager to share freely. We can, especially with Twitter, we've had a good bit of success in getting out information or lessons. People will share lesson ideas and tag us in them, that are part of our rogue network. And then we'll share them out, and it goes to, all of our followers across multiple networks. We'll do it on Facebook as well. And one thing that was very interesting, though, our first idea with the Rogues page at Star Wars in the Classroom, that website, we decided we would have a landing page where people could post lesson plans. And it started out as a great idea until we had over 1,000 members, and then 2,000 members. And I think the last count we had with the Rogues, we had over 3,000 members in that network, and it kind of grew larger than we could manage in giving everyone their own page. So what we kind of transitioned to doing is encouraging people to share those ideas on our social media sites, and then we would share them out. And so it's been great because it's been 33 different nations where we have content that's being taught from Star Wars in the Classroom, either things that lessons that Wes and I teach, or lessons from our fellow rogues. Believe it or not, we have a large following, a very active network of PE teachers, phys ed teachers who are just amazing at the games that they create in their classrooms, in their gymnasiums, to encourage kids to get fit with Star Wars. So and we've got some amazing music teachers as well. So it's not just relegated to teaching one or two subject areas. It's really across the curriculum.
Yeah, well, I know I probably would have enjoyed PE class more had we had foam lightsabers and chasing each other around. That'd have been right up my alley.
So as the website grew, it was really a great way for us to have a resource center for sharing our ideas about teaching with Star Wars. But we really got the most traction out of social media, especially Twitter. And we were able to connect with a lot of amazing fans and a lot of amazing teachers through that network, and also grow our connection with our friends at Lucasfilm as well. And once we transitioned over to do it in Star Wars in the Classroom, that led to a lot of cool adventures that we had as well. Of course, we going to Skywalker Ranch was amazing. That was kind of part of something we were doing with Indy, but we were able to return to the ranch, but not Skywalker this time, but Big Rock Ranch, which was home to Lucasfilm Animation until it moved after the Disney purchase, and home still to Edutopia. And was a wonderful opportunity for Wes and I to present at the Q Rockstar conference that was held there, and got to talk about Star Wars in the Classroom. So, what were your thoughts about Big Rock, man? After having gone to Skywalker, what were your thoughts about going to Big Rock Ranch?
Well, I mean, if we're comparing Big Rock to going to Skywalker Ranch, I can't really say it's better. But of course, you're on a major Lucasfilm property. It's well known. It's another Holy Land kind of Star Wars site that you're fortunate to get to go see. But it was beautiful. It was cool to present to the Q Rockstar conference and meet a lot of great people. But I had a hard time not geeking out the whole time. Because again, you're at another Lucasfilm property where a lot of cool things have happened. But typical with Mr. Lucas, it was beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous. Art Deco.
Yeah.
I think one of my coolest things I like was the suit of samurai armor.
Yeah, I remember that. Well, something that's cool too that I didn't think about it so much when we were at Skywalker Ranch before that, but George Lucas, he does his best. I mean, there's obviously buildings and things that he has to put there, but he does his best to try to preserve the natural landscape as much as he can.
Oh yeah.
And if you think back on it, there were no parking places really. I mean, like highly visible, and at Big Rock especially. We had to park underground in a parking garage because he didn't want that out visible, messing up the landscape and everything.
No parking deck, right?
Cool.
Same way at Skywalker. If you remember, actually, we parked before the entrance to the underground deck, but he absolutely is very conservation minded and loves to preserve the landscape as much as possible, like you said. And so, both of those properties are a testament to that. But going to Big Rock was just another great adventure. So much fun that we got to spend that weekend presenting at the conference there. But I think that going to Star Wars Celebration may have been, while going to Big Rock is awesome, getting to hang out with your fellow fans at Celebration is fantastic.
Yeah, you and I had the chance to go to Anaheim back in 2015, and this was when was that, like April or something, or March, somewhere in there?
Yeah, I don't.
And it was the year that The Force Awakens was coming out. So this was this was exciting because we're all like, we don't know anything about the J.J. Abrams movies. We have no idea who the new characters really are. We don't know any of that stuff, and so there was so much anticipation and excitement. I remember they had Kylo Ren's lightsaber on display.
Oh, yeah.
There was so much mystery about it because we knew from that little teaser trailer it had the guard on it and all that stuff, but seeing it up close and all the wires hanging outside of it, it was just, there's so much speculation. It was really cool. But the highlight, I guess there were really two highlights, but they happened all at the same time. But we were there in the big theater when they presented for the first time the trailer that ended with Han and Chewie at the end. And I remember that was really emotional. That was so exciting to see that. And then they brought out the whole new cast and, of course, all the returning cast like Luke or I should say Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher and all of them. And it was so cool to be a part of that. I'd never been a part of anything like that before.
Yeah, Wes was talking about where we saw the trailer premiere. We were fortunate because some people didn't get in. It was at the Anaheim Convention Center, and we were in the main arena, and we were way, way up in the top. I think we were right next to where the roof met the wall. But it didn't matter. There was a massive screen, and the excitement was unreal. And when that trailer played, and I remember JJ after it ended, JJ came back out and said something to the effect of, "Would you like to see that again?" And everybody just erupted, And then as soon as they dropped the lights down, it was like a pin drop. Everybody was quiet again. But I think one of the things that I was very excited about, just as much as seeing the trailer and all the hype around the new Star Wars movie, was having an opportunity to meet in person many of the friends we'd made on social media, like Jay Krebs, who was featured on an episode of the show earlier in the year, and also Amy Ratcliffe. We ran into her at Disneyland, actually. I think Amy and I talked about that when we first got there. And Dan Zayer, who is Coffee with Kenobi podcast, which is a fantastic podcast for fans, and just so many others. Adam Bray, actually, yeah, that's right. Met Adam there the first time too, and Adam has been on the show as well. So, just meeting a lot of people. John and Marie Macias, and then it was so cool having traded emails with Tracy Canobio for so long with the Young Indy series.
And then there she was.
there was Tracy. It's like, wait, Tracy in the flesh. That was awesome. Just to meet these people, because you get to be friends with them, and then to have this common love of teaching, and then of Star Wars, and just getting an opportunity to share all of that excitement with them was just really special. Anytime you get to go to a celebration. So if you're a Star Wars fan and you've never been, we highly recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Dan, and I got to say, one of the cool things we got to do too when we were there is Dan had worked out somehow that they had the cantina there that they were filming all these special segments for StarWars.com, and they were putting them on YouTube Live or whatever. And they were interviewing, cast members. They were interviewing even Weird Al Yankovic, all sorts of people. And they needed people in the background to kind of fill the cantina and look busy. And so Dan roped us into that. And we spent the better part of, I think, our first or second day there.
Yeah, it was
Messed up at smugglers or whatever and hanging out in the Creature Cantina, which was pretty cool. And those are still on YouTube, by the way. You can find us in the background.
Yeah, so that was awesome because they were doing the live segments from Celebration. Like that was the first. I don't know if that was the first year. I think it may have been the first year they were doing those, the live stream. But the Cantina set really was a faithful reproduction of the Cantina from Star Wars, and we were able to hang out in there. And I think one of my favorite moments was getting to have some time to talk with Peter Mayhew. They brought Peter in through the back of the set to give him a chance to rest, and set him back in Han's alcove. But had the chance to talk with Peter about his friendship with my friend from college, Albin Johnson, founder of the 501st. Al and I went to Furman together, and just had a chance to thank Peter for being such a good friend to Albin, because they've been very close over the years, and that led to Peter telling some cool stories, and just a genuine, sweet person, very, very much so. And then, of course, we were on set when Billy D. Williams came in as well, which was really cool. They brought Billy D. in, and we actually got to escort Weird Al out of the venue in kind of in disguise. That was neat too. He'd been on the live stream, and then they put Jedi robes on him, and we were in costume already, and they kind of put a couple of us in costume with a couple of bodyguards around Weird Al, and then put this Jedi robe over him and brought the hood down so you really couldn't see him. He looked like any other fan just walking around, and we walked him out through the crowd, and no one was any the wiser. But that was a lot of fun getting to spend time on the set for sure.
One of my favorite stories from the Creature Cantina was when we, you and I had to go and get in these costumes, and we got kind of separated. And so I just had on a bandolier and a jacket and some boots and pants or whatever, and I didn't have a mask or anything on. And so I got sent into the cantina ahead of you. And, I didn't know what I was doing. I knew they were filming. I was having to pretend to drink things, whatever it was. And, there's all these people there that I don't know. And then next thing I know, there's this alien kind of hovering around me, and I'm just carrying on ridiculous conversation with this alien because, we're supposed to look like we're talking and all this kind of stuff, and the alien's not talking back to me. And I just think, why does this person keep following me around? Who is it? And come to figure out, of course, when we took a break, it was you. You took your mask off, and
that alien was talking. You just couldn't. All you could hear through the latex, through that rubber mask was. It was.
Well, that's pretty authentic. So there you go.
And I thought you could hear everything I was saying.
But I was, caught up in what we were doing. I wasn't thinking straight, I guess. But that was so funny when you took that mask off. I was like, well, yeah, of course it was you.
It was the big reveal for sure. Yeah. But that was a lot of fun. Yeah, and I have to thank Dan for getting us up there to Matt Martin was looking for some people to be extras on the set, and so we had a good time doing that. So but yeah, those going to celebrations are always fun. The panels are awesome. What was really cool too is we were able to go to the Star Wars Rebels presser to speak with it was just it was a press event, and we were able to get back to that and have a panel discussion, or be part of a panel discussion with the cast and crew from Rebels, and Dave Filoni and everyone else. And I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to Vanessa Marshall, because Vanessa was one of our first members to join the Rogues. when she found out, about Star Wars in the classroom, she said, "Hey, I'm not a teacher, but how can I help?" And if you don't know Vanessa, she's the voice of Hera on Star Wars Rebels, and is an amazing voice actress. Does a lot of animated work on different shows. But we were able to catch up with Vanessa there for the first time and chat with her, but also ask her and Freddie Prinze Jr. and Dave Filoni and some other guys some questions about, we had to ask them what they thought was really the lessons that Star Wars Rebels taught students. And I'll never forget, there were several great answers, but Vanessa said something to the effect of the value of family and found family as well, because the crew of the Ghost was really a found family. And I think it was Taylor Gray, who's the voice of Ezra, who said that it was about having hope, which is awesome. And that really is what it's all of Star Wars, regardless of the film or the book, or it's at its basis, it's often about hope. But getting a chance to interact with those folks and getting, especially with Vanessa, get to spend more time with her and build that friendship was great. And it started at Anaheim at Star Wars Celebration.
Yeah, I wasn't there for that, so I can't comment on that. I had to go home.
That's right. Wes had to go back to the house. I forgot you had to leave early.
Yeah, well, I think it's because I was missing too much school, so I needed to get back. Couldn't miss too many days.
Yeah. Going to celebrations are always a lot of fun. Getting to reconnect with friends and continue to build those friendships in the context of sharing your love for Star Wars. But we had a really unique experience that was a lot of fun. We got to be in a documentary called In a Galaxy, an app-only television series. It was for Verizon. What was the name of that app?
It was the Go90 app.
That's it, yeah. I don't know that any of that series is still available anywhere. It was really cool, though, because they went and interviewed fans from all over and just told their stories in about 30 minutes. And so they came and told the story of Star Wars in the classroom, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was, of course, very nerve-wracking for me because I was on the stage, with my particular students, my class, and we were looking at how I use Star Wars to do these World War II comparisons. And so, we had to do all sorts of paperwork and get all these permissions, because these kids were going to end up on this documentary with their faces. And so there was all sorts of legal work we had to go through with my school district and Lucasfilm. But it turned out it was worth it. It was really cool. And, I don't even know what to say about it because it was just so neat.
Yeah, we started at my house, which was, it's
that's right.
Yeah, having a film crew in your house doing shooting a documentary. It's just like all the different camera angles and things. It was really cool. So they started out by filming us in my home office, and there was a little bit of a story that we put together. It's kind of a setup for to get to Wes's classroom, and it had to do with an event that we were doing at Roper Mountain Science Center, kind of like we did in the last episode. We talked about the Walking Through Time with Indiana Jones museum style exhibition we did at Roper Mountain, and this time we were doing one called Star Wars Science, Myth, and Imagination. And so it was kind of centered, the storyline was kind of centered around Wes and I meeting to talk about that, and then me coming to his classroom to see how he was teaching Star Wars or teaching World War II with Star Wars. And so that's where it got exciting with the kids. What were the kids' reactions, Wes, for having a documentary film crew in their class?
Well, I can't really speak for them, and it's been, I think, 5 years ago or something. Yeah. But, I would probably go out on a limb to say that for many of those students, that was probably the coolest thing that happened to them in high school. And y'all have to realize, the listeners need to understand, this was like a legit film crew. This wasn't some dude rolling around with his iPhone out. This was the real deal. Boom mics, cameras on gyroscopes. Just the whole thing. And it was really cool. And it was very intimidating, I got to say. to be a part of something like that. But just like with teaching, just like anything else, once you get going, everything kind of starts to fall into place and you just do what you do. But the kids really enjoyed it, and they came through because, as a teacher, I mean, think of if you're a teacher and you're listening, when an administrator or somebody walks in to do an observation, you're thinking, what are these kids going to do? Are they going to say something that's off the wall? They're going to throw me off. Or, they're going to say something like, oh, we never do this any other day, stuff like that. But the kids really came through. They asked great questions. They were highly interactive, and it was just really phenomenal, the whole experience. And the camera crew, they were great people. We went out and had dinner with them later that night, and they were just really good people. I really enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's really a shame too, because you and I, of course, have a copy of that documentary, but because of licensing and copyright or whatever, we're not allowed to show that. And it was a really, and I'm not saying that you and I are in it, but it was a really good documentary, and all that whole series was very good. But yeah, well, my favorite story from the Go 90 app series, in a Galaxy, was, I think it was actually the first episode, where there's people that go out into the desert in California to find the place where they filmed the Sarlacc, the whole thing there. And apparently, I didn't know this, and I still want to go out there and find my own little piece of history, but apparently you can go out there and actually find leftover remains of the Sarlacc. You can actually dig up the little pieces of latex or whatever it was.
Wow.
Truthfully though, because I think there's a group that goes out there, they lead people out there to it. There's probably some dude out there like the day before burying little old nasty latex. But that's pretty cool if that's true.
It is.
I'd like to have a piece of the Sarlacc.
Yeah, for sure. So, Wes, what's been your biggest takeaway from teaching with Star Wars over all these years?
Well, I think for me personally, other than just getting this great feeling out of creating more Star Wars fans for the universe, for me, it's just a reminder, and I think it's a lesson to a lot of teachers, that you can do something that seems completely off the wall, and maybe it even appears like it may not have any real value because you're just showing a movie or something like that. But you can take something like that and you can turn it into something, really great, and something that really has important lessons and really connects with your students and takes their education and their learning to a completely different level than what most people see on the surface. And I know that I'm sure there's been teachers who have judged me for showing Star Wars, and they never take the time to understand what I'm doing with it. And they just assume, I'm showing some movies, I'm wasting time, I'm not really teaching, but there's something there. And so I think the lesson that I've learned from teaching with Star Wars is don't be afraid to take risks. If you think there's something there that's important that you can use to teach your kids, that you can hook them and reel them in and teach them something really important, don't be afraid to do it, as long as it's school appropriate. Okay, Fight Club might have a lot of great lessons in it, but that's probably
no, don't go there. Don't go there.
Yeah, but Star Wars, you should be fine.
Yeah, and that's a great way to kind of end this up. And you've heard us talk a lot today about StarWarsInTheClassroom.com, and we'll just let you know right now that while you can find that work, our Star Wars work, on Twitter at Star Wars in Class, and we'll put that in the show notes, as well as our Facebook page, which is also at Star Wars in Class. Well, you can follow our work there. The website, for a little bit of time now, has been down and has been taken offline. That's because Wes and I have plans on revamping that content and putting it on a new platform, on a new website. And we had the best intentions of doing that, having that ready to go about like March or April. And of course, that's when the world took a kind of a turn. And since that time, as educators, both he and I have been swamped with moving everything that we do in our professional lives to virtual learning. And so this labor of love called Star Wars in the Classroom has had to take a back seat for a little while, a little hiatus, at least online, but we're still pushing out some stuff on our social media. But when when we roll the new website out, I think you'll really enjoy it. So we'll make sure everyone knows when that will be, but that is coming down the pike. So until then, I'd just like to say again, Wes, thanks for being on the show, and thanks for being such an amazing partner in all these adventures.
Well, I appreciate it, man, and I appreciate you. I mean, you're like my Yoda. I always knew I loved Star Wars. I always loved Young Indy, and I got the connections, but I'm not sure I would have been brave enough to turn that corner and actually use that stuff in the classroom. And so you helped me see that, be willing to take that leap. So thank you. And thank you for having me on the show. I've enjoyed talking with you, and I hope a lot of people walk away with some new great ideas and insights from this.
So if you'd like to learn more about our work, including our workshops, webinars, speaking engagements, and more, visit our website at imagineeringedu.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at ImagineeringEd and Facebook at Imagineering Education. We hope you'll also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or Google Podcasts, or anywhere else you find your favorite podcasts. And when you do, please don't forget to leave us a review and rate us. It helps other people find us. So until next time, remember, there's a great, big, beautiful tomorrow just a day away. Be blessed, everyone.